Good morning, good day, good afternoon. It is Wednesday, January 20th, and today we are going to answer the age-old debate question of who's a better pilot, helicopter pilots or airplane pilots. I've got a special guest, Colin Hodges, on today. We're going to talk all things airplanes, helicopters, sales, marketing, and personal branding. You'll want to stay tuned and watch today's show. Colin, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Doug, how are you, sir?
I am doing awesome. I'm excited for today's episode. I get to watch you two duke it out and take a passenger seat literally while you two chat about it.
And I think you'll be surprised. I don't think there's going to be that much duking.
Yeah, I think Colin and I might be on the same page about things. So today's show, we've got a special guest, Colin Hodges. He is I guess you are now the Mountain and Midwest sales rep for Bell. Is that the official title?
I'm the Bell 505 sales manager for the Mountain and Midwest region. So I cover one aircraft, 13 states, and it's a blast, man. These customers are so fun.
Well, again, I've got a soft spot for helicopters. That's right, where I cut my teeth. But I want to get into this because I think this is fun. We always see the memes and the battles back and forth between airplane pilots and helicopter pilots. Colin, where do you stand? Because I know you do both. You're a private pilot on your own airplane and all that stuff too, but you get to be around these amazing aircraft of the Bell helicopters, the 505 in particular. What's your take on helicopter pilots versus airplane pilots?
I don't think my fixed wing friends are going to appreciate what I'm about to say, but from a skill set level and just from mental toughness and mental preparation in flight, I really do think that it takes a special breed to become a helicopter pilot. It's not an easy skill. I compared, when I got my fixed wing rating, I compared it to like riding a bike, right? I mean, it's just something that you pick up in the first 10 to 12 hours, and then you're just continuing getting better and better and better. And then it just clicks like that, but on the helicopter side, I'm, at almost 16 hours trying to build up my time to get my rating on that side. It is a special skill. It uses a different section of your brain. I mean, you gotta have a full noggin up there to be able to handle the helicopter, because it is in an airplane, when you're up in the air, you can it'll fly itself. It really will. If you trim everything out right, you can sit there hands off and it'll pretty much fly itself. But unfortunately with a helicopter, it's just not that way unless you have an autopilot. So it just takes a different skill set. I think you have people that swear by airplanes and, well, if I ever get into an emergency, it's going to be way easier for me to get down than a helicopter. But quite frankly, I've been in an auto rotation and I know what it's like. And sometimes in me, I'm like, I don't know which one I'd want to be a part of. I go back and forth, but from a skill set level and the requirements, to become a helicopter pilot, I would say they're a little bit harder, and those pilots are a little bit more skillful than, say, fixed wing pilots. That's just my opinion. I've been on both sides. I've experienced both sides, so I feel I can have that opinion. But I know the thousands of pilots out there probably will disagree with me.
No, I love it. And, you have no argument from me. I think flying a helicopter, again, there's something special. It was funny, like back in flight school in the Army, we wrote on, after we graduated, and, once everybody was off doing their things, we'd realize, like the magic hover button, like that when you get that touch and you figure out what to do. But that's really just the start of stuff. Like you said, planes, it just kind of clicks and you build time and you get better. But helicopters, every flight is different every time, and it's just incredible. I really miss flying helicopters, and we got to get together. I need to go rip around in a Bell. It's been a while since I've been in a Bell helicopter. So, Doug, what are your thoughts?
I have a question. Is it the Osprey that's the hybrid?
Yeah, the tilt rotor?
That is correct. Yeah, the Osprey.
Does that mean they're just like another level because they have to learn both and perfect both?
Yeah, I'll let Chris Chris talk on that, but yeah, the vast majority of them do learn on both platforms.
Yeah, they do learn on both platforms. Again, I don't have any experience with Ospreys other than watching them fly over my head. Incredibly powerful aircraft. The R&D that had to go in that was absolutely incredible. So, I mean, I think those pilots, yeah, they get like the best of both worlds with the skills, because, once they get up to whatever altitude they need and they get into forward flight, it's pretty amazing what that thing does.
That is great. I'll be honest with you, listening to you talk though, I'm just glad I'm a passenger and I don't have to worry about it.
Awesome. Well, let's get into today's talk now that we've settled that debate again. If you have any counter arguments to helicopter pilots versus airplane pilots, please put the comments in the section below, and happy to hear those cases for or against why Colin and I think helicopter pilots are better. So maybe a little biased, but love to hear your thoughts. But let's get into all things social media, personal branding, because again, you started off in the marketing world and now you've transitioned in the sales world. Colin, and everything you're doing online, you've got a podcast, you've got all this other stuff that's kind of on the side that's personal and professional, because again, let's be honest, again, this whole everything you're doing is building up your platform of who you are and what you stand for. How have you seen like the internet really evolve over the last few years and to where we are today with the internet, how that enables and helps you facilitate having conversations or introducing products or ideas to people across the world and to your audience?
Yeah, I look at this in two parts, right? The internet has, even in the last 2 to 4 years, the internet has evolved so much. There's really, the way I see it, there's two pieces of the internet. There's the negative side of the internet, and there's the super positive side of the internet. And if you sit on the super positive side of the internet and what it's capable of and what these platforms can do and who they can connect you with, there's so much potential that you can do for yourself. I mean, they're all free, which unfortunately has some good and bad pieces to it, as we all know and are experiencing. But that's the thing, right? I mean, they're free platforms. There's no God-given right, to be able to use these, and at any time they can be gone. I mean, if Instagram is gone tomorrow, I hope it's not. I love it because I love photography and that's why I'm so attached to it. But I have a Twitter account. I keep that very strict professionally, only my family and my hobbies. I have a LinkedIn account that I try to connect with people. I started on the new Clubhouse. I'm still new into Clubhouse. Don't really know what it's all about, but I was on Vero, and I try all these different platforms because I know at the end of the day, they're all free and one could be gone at one point or one could take over the other. So if you really want to build your personal brand and really tell people out in the world what you stand for and what you do, you got to stay on that positive side of the internet. And as I've experienced, if you just show who you are and what you like to do, and that's what you talk about, I mean, because it just comes so naturally out to you, you're not really trying, the amount of people that you can attract it's infinite. I mean, it really, really is. And as I experienced on my podcast, my podcast started as a way to document my flight training. It started with me talking into my phone and ventured into a full-fledged production, which is super, super easy. And people think podcasting is hard. I mean, you guys do it yourself. It's really not that difficult. You got to put in the 20 minutes to produce something and sit there for 30 minutes and record it. It's not difficult. It's like having a normal conversation at the bar, so people have the negative stigma. I sit on the positive stigma of what the internet can do and who it can connect you with and the opportunities that it can bring. But at the end of the day, you got to use it the right way, and you have to use all the tools differently. You can't use each tool the same.
I love that you said that, and in a way, again, like this is the natural evolution of communication. You said like, this is no different from having a conversation at the bar, or, again, now that we don't have events and trade shows, that we were typically used to. I mean, this is how people figure out who you are, how they develop some sort of rapport with you, figure out, is this person somebody that I'm going to like dealing with or talking with? Is this company going to be something that can fit into my life and benefit me or my company? Like, that's those conversations, because I think up until that point, again, in particular, our industry was pretty analog. They waited on these events and trade shows to try and have these conversations or get leads or try and close deals. And, you know, aside from maybe traditional phone calls, maybe some email and analog marketing, I mean, that was really the extent of conversations. Whereas we know, because of the internet, like you had mentioned, like we can have these conversations ongoing all day, every day. And really, it's at the convenience of the consumer. You know, they'll find your stuff, they'll save it. It's just such an awesome, convenient way to, again, to kind of build these relationships. And you said your ability to attract audiences is infinite, and I think that is the potential and the positive side, which is so awesome, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you know, for you to be successful at social and be able to meet, you know, build those connections with folks, you have to be the same person on social media that you are in real life. I mean, at the end of the day, that's how you continue on with any goal you have if you're trying to use social media for that reason. But the problem is if people use it and they're not the same person, they're going to get weeded out so fast. And I think it's going to hurt them even harder than, you know, word of mouth opinion. Because if somebody has an opinion of me, today they can go on social media and look at what I do, look at my family, look at what I stand for, and they're like, oh, well, maybe that's not true. And then they meet me in person, and it takes 10 minutes to figure out who you really are.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of people flossing out there in the world today, and if you're trying to make real connections with people, you got to be the same person on social that you are in real life.
Well, I think that's the beauty of a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's like once you do, let's say, you know, 15, 20 episodes, your true colors always have to come through. Like, you can only fake it but so long. So creating like a podcast and getting your true voice out there, and I love that you chose to take the positive spin. That's such a piece of leverage for people. Like you said, when they come up to you, it's almost like they've already talked to you. They've already known you. Have you had that happen, Colin, where you run into someone, it's like, oh, I feel like I've met you before. I feel like I know you.
You know, it was so funny that exact thing happened probably, I would say, a year and a half ago. This was more towards when I started my podcast first. I would say it was kind of in that 50% infancy still. So it wasn't what I would call my full production just yet. But I was pulling in with my wife to an FBO here in Fort Worth. We were returning a plane, and one of the linemen came out, and he looked at me. He said, "Hey, you're the one that has that podcast, right?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." You go, "You listen to it? Like, that's crazy." He goes, "Yeah, I've listened to every episode so far. I'm actually in the process of doing my training here in Fort Worth as well. And it just kind of keeps me going. And you've thrown some decent, you know, tips here and there, but it's kind of nice to see somebody real life going through the same thing that I'm going through." And I said, "Hey, that's awesome." And now over social media, we stay connected. I think he's got his license now. I'm not sure. But, you know, the podcast really helps bring out that true self in you because you're using your voice. You can hear, it's amazing through the voice how, you know, genuine you can hear somebody. And that's why I think voices, especially now, voices are going to absolutely take off. You know, I sort of feel like I took advantage of it, but in that podcast and learning, you know, there's actually real people listening out there. I actually took a year break from my podcast. I'm in the process of starting it back up. I had my son, I got a new job. We were doing work on my house. There were just more priorities. So I didn't quit. I kept it up, but I needed to take a little break. Well, in that 1 year break, I saw my listenership just explode. I hadn't released an episode in it's about 12 months now. And I'm almost to 20K downloads on it. And I didn't really even think twice about it. I'm like, oh my Lord, this is weird. I literally popped it up after 12 months. And so if you're genuine, you have that, you know, that genuine voice between your podcast and all your social media accounts, and they're all the same, people are going to start listening and following to you. And I don't claim to be a professional at anything. I'm just telling people my passions.
I love the authenticity part is 100% true. And as you mentioned, again, like for companies or people out there that are trying to do their personal brand, again, your representation of, you know, when you're in front of a client, you know, whether it's a dinner or whatever, it has to be the same thing online. You have to have that brand cohesiveness. And if you're not authentic, if you're not genuine, again, as Colin had mentioned, like you're going to get outed really, really quickly. And the other beauty thing of doing content well online and on social media for building that personal brand is that content lives indefinitely, especially if it's good content. Colin, you just mentioned that, you haven't touched your podcast in 12 months and your viewership exploded because that content continued to live out there and more people found it engaging and entertaining. And now, you have a captive audience, that you could keep driving forward with. So there's so many golden nugget bombs that just was dropped there. And for those that are just tuning in, we've got Colin Hodges with us, 505 Bell sales rep for the Mountain and Midwest regions. And we're talking in all things power of personal branding, social media, marketing, and the internet. I want to transition over to, aside from kind of the personal brand side, Colin, when you think of how business and communication has evolved, and particularly because of COVID, where in-person things are really a thing of the past at this moment. Hopefully they all go back to getting back to that. But right now, everybody's been so conditioned to these Zoom meetings or virtual meetings, right? How do you think, you had mentioned a little bit of voice, but video, how much do you think of an impact is digital communications, digital marketing going to impact the way we do business going forward?
Oh, I think it's huge, and I've been on both sides of the business. I'm on the sales side now, and I've been on the marketing side. And, I think it was really easy for marketing departments prior pandemic to really kind of sit in the background, and just do their normal day-to-day work, and which helped the business ultimately. But now where the world is going, it's just changing, and marketing now has to take a bigger step up and really help the business. In my world, in aviation sales, and specifically helicopter sales, the in-person meeting is still very, very important. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't trade an in-person meeting over a webinar for anything.
Yep.
There's definitely more power to that. And in this business, when a customer is going to fork over that much money for an aircraft, there's going to be some expectation that there's going to be meetings in real life. But what you can do to supplement that with all these different types of media that come from marketing's got to take that bigger role and really lift brands up by being able to do that. Because us in sales, we don't have that capability, and we're going to have to rely on marketing to ultimately do that for us.
One of the things I find interesting is it's rare that we get somebody that's sat on both sides of the fence, both in sales and marketing. Where do you believe that gap is going to be bridged, and how does personal branding play a part in that?
I think the gap is going to be made by trust. I don't know if it has anything to do with either side liking or disliking each other. I've been on both sides, so I trust, even in my own company, I trust my marketing department because I know every single one of them, and I'll reach out and rely on them to do certain things for me. But you get folks who have been in this business so long and have been successful doing the things that they've been doing. And so sometimes you think you don't need marketing. Well, I even pandemic wise, I can do this myself. It's still working, but the world is still changing, and you need to rely on marketing to be able to do what they do, because they are very, very important to all business, whether that's my business, your guys' business, any OEM, you name it. The brands that are going to make the most impact in the years coming are the brands and OEMs who put that trust in their marketing department to be able to start doing that work for you, because they can make my job a lot easier by putting out solid content. And I can say at Bell, over the last 12 months, the marketing and our communications department, there was always that battle between the two departments, but they're working so well together now, and they're putting out some really, really cool content that I think a lot of customers, especially our OEM customers, are really enjoying. And quite frankly, it's stuff that our other OEMs aren't doing.
What's your opinion on cross-training salespeople with marketing and then marketing people with the sales process?
Great question, Doug.
That is a good question. I would say from the sales side, it's more along the lines of, here's marketing and here's what they can do for you. The other way around from marketing, I think it would benefit a lot of people in marketing to understand the sales process while also meeting and understanding the customer buying journey, because every customer is so different. It's strange. You can't, and this was a challenge when I was on the marketing side. It's so hard to put a cookie cutter customer journey together because everyone is so different. My one customer in Utah is so different than my one customer in Arizona or my one customer in Wisconsin. There's no I mean, you literally have to set a buying journey per customer, which is impossible. But if marketing understands who these people are and how they buy, it can help them better utilize those tools and then teach me, the salesperson, well, here's my plethora, my laundry list of tools that I can use to help you in your sales goals.
You just touched on something I think, especially when it comes to B2B, that so many companies miss, and that is including the sales conversation or the sales process and the customer journey. They don't give the flexibility or the agility or empower the sales team to adapt. Like, you may need to reorder elements of the customer journey to suit customer A versus customer V. But I don't think that many companies have closed the gap or enabled the communication to just say, hey, this is the flexibility I need to make this deal happen. And these are the tools I need to support it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what marketing, and I always stress this too, is you can cookie cut marketing and it's not going to work. But you really got to keep marketing personal and personal to that end customer. So if you have to, you can cookie cut a special package for a customer, but each package has to be specialized per customer. So, I mean, you can have those overarching, pieces or resources, but inside that resource, you have to have it personalized.
How has your personal brand helped with that?
I'm still so new to this, right? Like, on the sales side, I'm yet still to even hit a 1-year mark. So all my experience comes from the marketing side, but luckily I had those mentors on the sales side who I appreciate greatly, who were able to kind of pull me in and really, really show me that. So, from a personal brand standpoint, I think people understand that I come from both sides of the business. And so there's a little bit of trust factor there with the personal brand, but, I'm still, new to the world. And so you can't be cocky about it. You can be confident in what you know and what you've experienced, but, customers love honesty and they love the truth. And if that's what you're doing, it's going to help your personal brand, whether it's big or you're just starting out.
Everybody loves a humble sales guy.
It's so weird because, obviously people out there in the world think salespeople have big egos. And I won't deny that. To be successful in sales, you have to have a little bit of an ego because it'll get you far. But you can't let that ego go so far that you just start making your customers very mad. They don't want to work with you, because in the helicopter world, Chris, I mean, even in the military helicopter world, it is a small community.
Very.
And it spreads like a virus. I mean, it's the opinion, people have of you will get out very, very fast.
For sure. I love, I'm smiling so big on the inside that everything you talked about the customer journey and making things customized, because I think people traditionally in our industry, again, like they're still early to figuring out the social media, the marketing thing. And yes, while they're doing enough to come to the table with table stakes, I like to say, like, to do things and to really excel, like you had mentioned, Colin, I think a lot of people are falling short because, one, they haven't documented that customer journey that you mentioned for each different customer segment. It hasn't been personalized. And then they try to provide cookie cutter solutions, as you had mentioned, for that. And then, again, as you mentioned, as people are spending significant amounts of money on a product or service, right? Like, the content that you're delivering to build that trust, I feel like should parallel, again, that commitment from the customer. Again, I think there's a lot of things that fall short when people try to deliver that same value and that same customer experience online as opposed to in person. I mean, you guys have a lot of great things going on, but what's your opinion on the online value, customer experience versus, the in-person stuff, and maybe the disconnect there for parts of our industry?
Oh, it's huge, and one of the things that we use at Bell is, it's kind of become my great friend right now, is we have this little configurator thing, right? Like, think of a car brand. You can go online and you can build your car, and then it'll spit it out because you put your address, your zip code, and it'll send it to the nearest dealership in your area, which is great. But on the helicopter side, because a helicopter, like I like to call it, it's like your fingerprint, right? Every helicopter is different. But you still need to be able to have that online tool for that person that is just in those beginning stages of thinking about a product. Having a configurator where they can really start those creative wheels turning, and then you get that information. So when I get that configurator information, I'm like, oh, this is the perfect time, because their creative juices are flowing right now. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to buy, but because they're using that tool and I know they used it, it's really cool to be able to, kickstart that and really just start having that conversation with the customer about creativity on what you can do with the product. So being able to have those resources online and readily available and making sure they're good resources, you can have a bad configurator and it's going to make a customer mad. You can have a great configurator and it's really going to help that process. So I know a lot of our Textron brands use that type of technology online, and I think it really, really helps customers, and why all our businesses have really, really good brand loyalty is just because of the resources. Now, are we 100% perfect? Absolutely not. We're still working, we're still building, but things are getting better. But the customer sees that and they appreciate that.
For sure. And again, as you mentioned, the data that you're able to gather from that allows you to be more prepared. So as a sales guy, you've had you're taking the marketing data, and as a sales guy, you're taking that intel and providing a better customer experience to prospects and leads and all that stuff, because you're prepared. You're speaking their language, and you're pulling on the heartstrings of what they want, as opposed to just coming at them with a shotgun approach or something completely out of left field, where now you've ruined that customer experience. So so many good things, Colin.
It's funny. It's one of the most fundamental skills I think people ignore is listening. Like a good salesperson will always listen to the prospect and try to give them the opportunity to get exactly what they want. But so many businesses undervalue the digital listening, like that footprint and the signals that are being given to you to help make the website better, to make the product offering better, like to consistently evolve that customer experience from every touch point. Even just looking at like social comments in LinkedIn, there's a gold mine of information and data and feedback that most companies just ignore. And it could be as easy as going to a competitor's post and looking at what they're saying. They're going to give you the pulse of what they're frustrated with. Like there's so much good information out there that's readily accessible if we just slow down and looked in the right places.
Yeah, I mean, that is so right. And in this digital age, and what the customers do themselves, right? So like on our Bell 505 out on Facebook, there's a Bell 505 Jet Ranger X Facebook group. And it's people who operate on them, fly them, own them, or just fans of the aircraft. And it's a lot of people from the industry. And Bell has, taken the step of not really, engaging too much and trying to handhold people and tell them what to say. It's been a great listening ground for the company to be able to watch and learn. And we have, employees of Bell active in that group to be able to help these people. We want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, because we want to be able to make it better in the long run. But you can't do that if you're policing a website. So instead, Bell's been really good about just sitting back and listening, and then because of that, and the fact that this little aircraft creates kind of a family, it's really, really weird. All these customers are like a little family, and they have a little customer owners group, and they talk about training techniques and their, the do's and don'ts about the aircraft, what they love about the aircraft, what they don't like. And there's a few high level folks at Bell that are a part of this group, and they listen, and then they go tell the company what they're doing. So, I've given huge props to Bell and what they've done in the past, and how they've really improved some of that customer journey, because there was a time where it kind of, you can even see the surveys in the history, it kind of went down a little bit. And Bell said, okay, we were always number one in customer service and customer satisfaction. We're going to take about 24 months to really, really improve this. And because of, all that listening, it's gone, it's the trajectory is starting to go back up again, and customers, they see it.
That's awesome that you guys have recognized and have utilized, the digital tools, which are these platforms, to actually listen and interpret, analyze and action the data that you're getting. And I think that's why, again, I love doing what we do, Doug, and Colin, again, like, this is so awesome having this conversation with you, because, to hear from somebody like in their own company, in their own vertical, deploying a lot of the stuff that we're preaching to really help them move the needle in their business and not so much focus on like vanity metrics of those things. Like that is such a feel good feeling, to hear from somebody like yourself that's out there, that their company's doing amazing things, that you're doing amazing things. And I'm just super excited to see you know, as you continue to blossom in the sales vertical for you, like your career just take off from here.
Yeah, and I'll leave it as I think the next 2 years are going to be super important for some of these big OEMs, selling into kind of that smaller commercial space to the private buyer. And how they navigate these 2 years, I think, is really going to set the trajectory on those next 10 years. I really believe that.
Yeah. And then to piggyback just off of that, what is for somebody, whether they're in sales or they're in marketing or, maybe they're an OEM or some other manufacturer, some other supplier, just anybody in our ecosystem that is starting to get on board with realizing the value in digital marketing and the internet, what's one piece of advice you would give them that maybe you would have given yourself getting into this?
I would say first watch and listen, maybe find other people who are already successful at doing this. Watch what they're doing, because there's a lot of techniques and things that you can learn from people who are already successful at this. I mean, you don't even have to look at somebody in aviation. If I'm going to look at somebody in aviation, I'm going to look at my good friend, Mindy Lindheim over in Georgia, who's a absolute rock star at using the social world to connect with people. And it's ultimately turned into a new position that she gets to make, all this cool content for her company to be able to push sales. And now she's kind of going the other opposite side, right? She's going from sales to the other side. Yeah. But, because she has that skill set, I would say, hey, go watch what she's doing, because I do, and I watch other entrepreneurs and leaders, in social content to see what they're doing and how they interact with people, because you're really going to learn. And then that second step is obviously, that humbleness to understand that you're not going to be the best right away. It's going to take time. It's going to take reps. Just like if you're an athlete, you don't get good right away. You learn the process and you get better. And then I would say third, to be successful in utilizing the resources that you've learned, have been taught, or have been given by people, is don't be afraid to do something wrong, or don't be afraid to fail. Like you guys know, one content might fall flat on its face one day. And then 12 months later, you might kill it and it might get 1 million views, but you're going to take 10 failures to get a success. So you can't be afraid of doing the wrong thing, because it's ultimately going to teach you a lesson that could help you get to the right thing. And if you're always afraid of failing, you're probably never going to try enough to be able to hit that one thing that's really going to set your success forward.
Yeah. This was so awesome, Colin. Thank you. To kind of summarize, one, helicopter pilots are the superior pilots. Thank you for validating that, Colin. And then again, for everybody, again, Colin Hodges, 505 Bell sales rep, talked about how, make sure that you're documenting that customer journey, you're personalizing it, realizing that this whole marketing and the sales cycle, especially with our high ticket items in our industry that we offer, it's not an overnight success. We know that you have to put in the time and the effort to build that trust, to build those relationships, and that ultimately helps further the lifetime value of the customer. Because Colin, you had mentioned how Bell, customer satisfaction survey, and you guys have brand loyalty. I mean, that stuff's invaluable at that point. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your role on it. Where can people follow you online?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I would say the vast majority of the time. I love photography and video, so you'll probably find me most of the time on there. It's at Hodge, HODGE _CHE. You can find me at Twitter on the same handle. Obviously, Colin Hodges on LinkedIn. I think there's many Colin Hodges, so there's not really a tag for it. But just search me, and I'm sure you'll see my face and my title on there. I'm on Clubhouse now too. Don't really know if anybody really uses that too much. I'm still in the listening phase there before I try putting out content, so still learning more about that. Obviously, you can find me on Facebook. I'm active in some of those helicopter and aviation groups. And I think aviation is really, really good on Facebook. Some good, some bad. Yep. But the aviation community really utilizes Facebook really, really well. So if you're someone new coming into this industry or even marketing, go look at Facebook groups, because it's amazing the things you'll learn and you'll see. Yeah, and feel free, shoot me a DM on any platform. I always answer my messages, just like Chris and I, we talk all the time. I'm always there. I will never ignore a DM. It doesn't matter the type of question. I will always give a response.
For sure. And we'll put all your contact information again in the post. Colin, hopefully I'll see you at HAI, if not sooner. Other than that, thank you so much for coming on today. So many golden nuggets. Thank you so much for your time today, Colin.
Hey, man, I appreciate it and really appreciate the opportunity to be on your guys' show today.
Awesome. All right. Take care, everybody.
Yeah. See ya.